A storm is raging, not outside, but in the mind of a man standing in the dim glow of a flickering war-zone camp light. His name? Captain Rafik. Decorated, disciplined, and dangerously good at his job. Orders were his gospel. Until that night. She wasn't supposed to be there. A civilian. Wounded. Bleeding. Hidden beneath debris. Eyes wide with a mix of terror and pleading. Her name was Layla. A nurse who'd stayed behind when the city was evacuated. Too many injured, too few hands. Rafik had one job, sweep the sector and pull out. No deviations, his commander barked through the static-filled radio. But then he saw her. And suddenly, the battlefield didn't matter. The mission didn't matter. What mattered was her. His team hesitated. She's not our problem, one soldier muttered. But Rafik couldn't walk away. Not this time. He crouched beside her, checked her pulse. Weak, but alive. I'm getting you out, he whispered. She shook her head, barely audible. They'll kill you for this. I don't care. With bullets still echoing in the distance and the night swallowing every trace of safety, Rafik made the call that changed everything. He tore off his uniform jacket, wrapped her in it, and lifted her into his arms. Every step back to the extraction point was a gamble. Every shadow could have been death. And when the chopper pilot saw him carrying her, he shook his head. You'll answer for this. I know, Rafik said. But not today. And he climbed aboard. What happened after, well, let me know if you want the story to continue. Because it gets way more intense. The chopper blades sliced through the chaos like a heartbeat. Fast, panicked, alive. Rafik held Layla close as they ascended, her head against his chest, his heartbeat pounding against her temple. She was unconscious now, but safe. For the moment. When they landed at the makeshift military base, the medics rushed in. She's not authorized, someone snapped. She's not military. Rafik stepped forward, eyes steel. She is now. He stayed by her side, watching her wounds being treated, refusing to leave. Days passed. She fought off infection. He fought off questions. Why her? His commanding officer asked. He didn't answer. Because how could he explain the feeling? That electric moment when he looked into her eyes beneath the rubble, and something in him shifted. This wasn't duty anymore. It was something else. Something deeper. When she finally opened her eyes, the tent was quiet. Just the two of them. You stayed, she whispered, voice raw. I couldn't leave, he said, voice low. You changed everything. Layla tried to smile. You're crazy. I know, he said. But I'd rather be crazy and alive with you than safe and numb without you. And just like that, in the middle of a war zone, surrounded by the wreckage of lives and buildings, something beautiful began to grow. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow, fragile, real. He brought her tea brewed over a campfire. She teased him about his boots always being too polished. He showed her how to hold a rifle, just in case. She showed him how to listen with more than just ears. The world burned around them. But in the center of that fire, they found something no war could take. Want to hear what happens when the war comes knocking again, and Rafik has to make an impossible choice once more? It happened just after dawn. The sky was painted with smoke and sorrow, and the birds hadn't sung in weeks. Rafik and Layla were sharing a quiet moment, her hand in his, resting on a battered field table, when the siren screamed. Enemy breach. Sector 9. Rafik's radio crackled. Captain, we need you. Now. He looked at Layla. She didn't say a word, just nodded, but her eyes, they screamed louder than the sirens. I'll come back, he said, gripping her hand tighter. You better. He kissed her forehead, quick, like a promise, and vanished into the dust. The front lines were hell. Explosions cracked open the sky. Gunfire ripped through silence like scissors through thread. Rafik was everywhere, commanding, protecting, pushing back the enemy like a man possessed. But his mind was still with her. Every time he ducked for cover, every bullet that whizzed past, he saw her face. Back at the base, Layla refused to hide. She joined the medics, wrapping wounds with trembling hands, barking orders with a fire in her voice that surprised even her. She saved lives, but her eyes never left the camp's edge. She was waiting. Hours blurred. Blood mixed with sweat, fear with adrenaline. And then, silence. Too quiet. A soldier stumbled into camp. Captain Rafik, he didn't come back with us. Her world froze. She didn't scream. Didn't cry. She just grabbed a med kit, a pistol, and ran. Past the guards. Past the wounded. Into the smoke. She found him under a collapsed wall, pinned, fading fast. His face lit up when he saw her, even through the pain. "You always have to be the hero, huh?" she said, kneeling beside him. "You came for me," he whispered. "Of course I did," she said. "I love you, idiot." He smiled, weak but real. "I've been dying to hear that," he said, then winced. "But maybe not literally dying." She laughed through the tears. "You're not dying. Not today." Together, they dragged each other out. Step by brutal step. Both bleeding. Both breaking. But never letting go. And as the sun rose again, through the smoke and ruins, two silhouettes stood, together, battered but unbroken. Because some love stories aren't written in poetry or framed in candlelight. Some are carved into history, forged in fire, and sealed with the kind of devotion that defies even death. Want to see how their love survives after the war? Because peace isn't always peaceful. Peace came not with celebration, but with silence. The kind of silence that follows too much noise. Cities lay in ruins. Flags were raised, but few smiled. For Rafik and Layla, survival wasn't the end, it was just another beginning. They were transferred to a reconstruction zone, far from the front lines, but not far from memory. Rafik, now with a limp and scars like maps across his body, was tasked with helping rebuild logistics. Layla took over a field clinic, where she still bandaged wounds that would never fully heal. At night, they shared a small tent made of patched-up canvas and whispered dreams into the darkness. No rings, no vows, just shared breaths and quiet gratitude. Every morning, Rafik made her coffee with a shaky hand. Every night, she rubbed the pain from his shoulders. But healing wasn't easy. Some days, Rafik would wake screaming, clutching the phantom of a rifle. Other days, Layla would stare too long at a wound, her hands trembling as flashbacks washed over her. "You okay?" he'd ask. "Not yet," she'd whisper. "But I will be." They leaned on each other, when memories were too heavy, when guilt came knocking, when the silence got too loud. Love, for them, wasn't romance. It was presence. The kind that says, "I see your broken pieces, and I'll hold them until you can carry them again." And then one day, Rafik disappeared. Not in battle, not in the night, but emotionally, withdrawn, distant. She found him sitting outside the tent, staring at a pile of rubble. "They offered me a desk job," he said, not looking at her. "Away from here. Safe. Clean. Lifeless. You want it?" He turned, eyes heavy. "Only if you come." Layla knelt beside him. "I didn't survive a war to lose you to peace." He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a twisted scrap of metal. It was once a bullet casing, now shaped like a ring. "It's not gold," he said, "but it saved my life. And you saved everything else." She smiled, tears already rising. "Then I guess I'll have to say yes." And just like that, in a world trying to stitch itself back together, two souls vowed not just to survive, but to live. Want to hear what happens when the ghosts of war follow them into their new life and threaten everything they've built? They moved to the city. Not the one they had before the war. That city was dust now. But a new one, alive with noise and neon, trying desperately to forget its own pain. Rafik worked at the Ministry of Defense, buried in paperwork and red tape. Layla joined a civilian hospital, tending to injuries born of poverty and neglect, not bullets and bombs. At first, it felt like progress. They had a real bed, a door that locked, fresh bread in the morning, even laughter. But the ghost came anyway. Rafik would flinch at fireworks, wake up in cold sweats, hand reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Layla kept her medical bag by the door, just in case. The war hadn't ended. It had just changed shape. One evening, she came home late, blood on her scrubs, exhausted. He was at the table, staring at a letter. "What is it?" she asked. "They're sending me back," he said quietly. "Advisory mission. Training recruits." Silence. "Do you have to go?" "They say it's just 6 weeks. No combat. But you know what that means." Layla sat down, her hands trembling. "I can't lose you again, Rafik." "You won't," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. The night they spent together before his departure was wordless, slow, sacred. They didn't speak of the war, or fear, or goodbyes. Just hands, heartbeats, and the quiet promise between two people who had already risked everything. Weeks passed. Her letters went unanswered. News of a rebel ambush broke on the radio. Her chest tightened. She called every number. No one knew anything. No one told her anything. Until one morning, a knock at the door. She opened it and froze. He stood there, dirt-caked, eyes hollow, limp worse than before. "I promised," he said, voice cracked and dry. "I promised I'd come back." She pulled him in and didn't let go. That night, he held her like he'd been drowning. And she whispered into the hollow beneath his collarbone, "You don't have to be strong anymore. You just have to be here." Rafik didn't return to the ministry. He couldn't. Not after what he saw again. Not after what he had to do to survive. But they made it work. He opened a community shelter for veterans. She started a trauma clinic for survivors. Their home was small, always a little messy, always full of life. Because peace, they realized, isn't the absence of war. It's choosing love, even when the past claws at your heels. Even when you wake up screaming. Even when you're tired of fighting. Want to know what happens when they finally face the one person from their past they thought they'd never see again? It was a rainy Thursday. The kind of rain that sticks to your skin, not because of its cold, but because of the weight it carries. Rafik was at the shelter, helping a young veteran work through a panic attack, while Layla was organizing supplies in the clinic. And then, a voice. Low. Familiar. Sharp as broken glass. "Captain Rafik." He froze. Turned slowly. There, standing in the doorway, was Colonel Isom. The man who gave the order to leave Layla behind. The man Rafik had disobeyed. The man who had once been his mentor and almost his executioner. Layla stepped in just moments later, eyes locking on Isom. Her breath caught. Her hands clenched by her sides. "You," she whispered. The room fell silent. You could almost hear the memories charging in, loud as the war. Isom looked older. Not just in the wrinkles, but in the eyes. Haunted, like he'd carried the same ghosts, only without love to hold him upright. "I didn't come to cause trouble," he said, voice steady. "I came because I owe you both something." Rafik's jaw tightened. "You owe us a lot more than words." Isom stepped forward, pulling a worn folder from his coat. "These are names. Survivors. From the camp. People you thought were lost. We evacuated them in secret after you left." Rafik took the folder, suspicious. Opened it. Layla gasped. Amina, her best friend. A fellow nurse. Presumed dead for years. Tears welled in her eyes as she clutched the photo to her chest. "Why now?" Rafik asked, eyes still hard. Isom's voice cracked, just slightly. "Because peace doesn't mean anything if I can't make peace with myself." He turned to leave. Rafik didn't stop him. But as the door closed behind the old colonel, something shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a thread pulled loose from years of tightly woven pain. Later that night, Layla and Rafik sat on their tiny balcony, the rain now soft, like a lullaby. "She's alive," Layla said, still staring at the photo. "And we have a chance," Rafik said, "to rebuild. Not just buildings, but people, history, even us." She leaned into him, head on his shoulder. "Promise me," she whispered. "No more ghosts. No more silence. We face everything, together." He kissed her temple. "I promise." And beneath the hum of the city, beneath years of scars and sorrow, they held on to something rare. A love that had faced war, betrayal, and loss and still dared to hope. Want to see what happens when they travel to find Amina and uncover a secret that could change everything they thought they knew about the war? 3 weeks later, they boarded a train bound for the borderlands, where the last of the camps had been dismantled and survivors scattered like ashes. The journey was quiet, not out of fear, but reverence. Rafik held the folder tightly. Layla kept her hand on his knee. Neither of them spoke much. The weight of possibility sat between them like a third passenger. When they arrived, the sky was overcast, gray, but open. A local aid worker met them at the gates of a repurposed clinic. "She's here," he said. "But she's not the same." No one was. Layla stepped through the threshold first, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. And then, there she was. Amina. Older. Thinner. But unmistakably her. She turned slowly, eyes searching. And when they met Layla's, something fragile and beautiful cracked open. "Layla." The name felt like a prayer. They ran to each other, arms colliding, tears bursting forth. Years of grief, guilt, hope, and disbelief all collapsed in a single embrace. Rafik stood back, watching them, letting them have their moment, letting the past begin to mend. Later that evening, the three of them sat under a tree that had survived the bombing, its bark charred, but its leaves still green. Amina spoke of the night of the attack, how she'd been smuggled out, barely alive, and hidden by villagers who feared both sides. She spoke of watching the world forget her, and of the day she saw Layla's face on a hospital aid pamphlet, years later, like a ghost come back to life. They talked for hours, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars blinked awake. Then, silence again. But this time it was peace. "I thought I lost everything," Amina whispered. "You didn't," Layla said, gripping her hand. "We're still here." Rafik took a deep breath, the weight of 1,000 what-ifs lifting from his chest. "This war," he said softly, "took so much. But it also gave us something. Each other," Layla finished. They stayed until the stars painted the sky completely, and the wind hummed with the quiet strength of survivors. When they returned home, everything felt different. The ghosts still visited, but now they weren't so scary. The past was still there, but now it had context, healing, meaning. And as Rafik and Layla walked into the clinic the next morning, hands clasped tightly, eyes forward, they knew one thing. Their story wasn't about war, or orders, or even survival. It was about devotion. The kind that defies orders. The kind that rewrites destiny. The kind that, no matter the fire, the silence, or the storm, comes back and stays forever.